If you walked through a European beech forest in April, you would notice it before you saw it. A scent so pungent it announces itself across entire hillsides. Carpets of white star-shaped flowers blanket the forest floor, and the air is thick with the smell of what medieval monks called the poor man's medicine, and what Roman legionaries considered essential battle rations. This is not the garlic you buy wrapped in plastic at the grocery store. This is Allium ursinum, wild garlic, bear's garlic, Ramsons. It is the plant that kept the builders of Stonehenge alive through brutal winters, that sustained the armies of Charlemagne, that cured plague victims in remote alpine villages, and then quietly vanished from the American consciousness. Welcome to Ancestral Yields. If you want to grow a garden that connects you to the plants that shaped human survival, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's dig into the wild garlic. To understand why this plant matters, we must journey back to when human civilization was barely a whisper in the European forests. Wild garlic is among the oldest documented forage plants in human history. Archaeological excavations in Denmark dating to the Mesolithic period, approximately 9,000 years ago, have uncovered wild garlic seeds in cooking hearths alongside hazelnuts and crabapples. These were not accidental remains. The sheer concentration of seeds suggests deliberate collection and storage, a practice that predates agriculture itself. The ancient Greeks knew it as Scorodon agrion, and Hippocrates, the father of medicine, prescribed it for respiratory ailments and as a cleansing agent for wounds. But it was the Romans who truly weaponized this plant. Pliny the Elder, writing in his Naturalis Historia in 77 AD, documented that Roman soldiers carried wild garlic on long campaigns, not just for flavor but for survival. They believed it provided strength, prevented disease, and when crushed and applied to the skin, warded off infections from battlefield wounds. The Roman naturalist Dioscorides wrote extensively about wild garlic's ability to warm the belly, drive out worms, and clear the vision. For a soldier marching through Germania or Britannia, where supply lines were tenuous and winters were deadly, wild garlic wasn't a delicacy. It was insurance. The medieval period elevated wild garlic from survival food to spiritual weapon. During the plague years of the 14th century, when the Black Death swept across Europe, killing a third of the population, monasteries in the Swiss and Austrian Alps became refuges of botanical knowledge. Monks cultivated wild garlic in their physic gardens and created powerful tinctures by steeping the crushed leaves in wine or vinegar. They called these preparations theriac, universal antidotes believed to purify corrupted blood. While we now know that wild garlic couldn't cure bubonic plague, its powerful antimicrobial compounds did help prevent secondary infections, dysentery, and respiratory complications that often finished off plague survivors. Saint Hildegard of Bingen, the same 12th century mystic who championed the Cornelian cherry, also wrote about wild garlic. She classified it as a hot herb that drove out coldness from the body and recommended it specifically for clearing phlegm and treating stomach ailments. Her monastery at Rupertsberg cultivated it deliberately, not as a weed but as a primary medicine. By the Renaissance, wild garlic had earned a reputation across Europe as a blood purifier, a belief that persisted well into the 19th century when it appeared in British herbals as a spring tonic to thin the blood after heavy winter diets. The Latin name Allium ursinum translates to garlic of the bears, and there is genuine ecological truth behind this folklore. European brown bears emerging from hibernation in early spring seek out wild garlic aggressively. The plant's high vitamin C content, coupled with its antimicrobial sulfur compounds, helps bears cleanse their digestive systems after months of dormancy. Naturalists have documented bears eating massive quantities of wild garlic leaves, sometimes exclusively, for several weeks in spring. Indigenous peoples across northern Europe observed this behavior and concluded that if it was medicine for bears, it was medicine for humans. So how does a plant with that kind of resume become relegated to invasive weed status in North American gardening forums? The answer lies in 3 industrial revolutions: refrigeration, monoculture garlic farming, and the sanitization of the American diet. Before the 20th century, spring was a nutritional crisis across temperate climates. Winter food stores were depleted. Root vegetables were shriveled and bitter. Preserved meats were salt-laden and nutritionally degraded. Scurvy, caused by vitamin C deficiency, killed thousands every year. Wild garlic was the first fresh, vitamin-rich green to emerge in early spring, often pushing through snow in March. It was free, abundant, and required no cultivation. Entire communities would harvest it by the basketful, eating it fresh, cooking it into porridges, or preserving it in oil and vinegar. But then refrigeration changed everything. By the 1920s, citrus fruits could be shipped from California and Florida year-round. Scurvy became a historical curiosity. The desperate need for spring greens evaporated. Simultaneously, commercial garlic farming exploded in California's Central Valley. Growers developed massive bulb varieties bred specifically for long storage, uniform size, and mechanical harvesting. These cultivars could be planted with tractors, irrigated on timers, harvested with machines, and stored for months. Wild garlic, by contrast, had small, scattered bulbs buried deep in forest soil. It had to be harvested by hand in a narrow seasonal window. The leaves wilted within days. There was no way to mechanize it, no way to commodify it, and thus no economic incentive to promote it. The final blow came from the American cultural shift toward bland, predictable flavors in the mid-20th century. Post-war industrial food culture prized consistency. Campbell's soup tasted the same in Maine as it did in Oregon. Wild garlic, however, is aggressively pungent. Its flavor varies by soil, season, and harvest time. Early spring leaves are mild and delicate. By late April, they become intensely sulfurous. This variability terrified food manufacturers and alienated a generation raised on processed convenience foods. In Europe, particularly in Germany, France, and England, wild garlic retained its cultural status because traditional cuisines never fully industrialized. Spring still meant wild garlic soup, wild garlic pesto, wild garlic butter. In America, spring meant asparagus from a can. To understand what we've lost, we need to examine what wild garlic actually is. Despite the name, Allium ursinum is not the same species as supermarket garlic. Cultivated garlic is Allium sativum, domesticated thousands of years ago in Central Asia. Wild garlic is a European woodland native evolved to thrive in the shaded, moist understory of deciduous forests. It spreads both by seed and by division of its small, white, elongated bulbs. The leaves are the prize. Broad, lance-shaped, bright green, appearing in dense colonies that can carpet entire hillsides. The chemistry of wild garlic is what makes it extraordinary. Like all alliums, wild garlic produces sulfur-containing compounds, primarily allicin, which forms when the plant cells are damaged. According to a study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry, wild garlic contains significantly higher concentrations of alliin, the precursor to allicin, compared to cultivated varieties. When you crush or chew wild garlic leaves, the enzyme alliinase converts alliin into allicin almost instantly, creating a more immediate and intense flavor and medicinal effect. Beyond allicin, wild garlic is loaded with vitamin C. Fresh spring leaves contain approximately 150 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams, nearly triple the amount found in oranges. This made it invaluable in pre-modern Europe, a natural pharmacy sprouting from the forest floor precisely when it was needed most. The leaves also contain significant amounts of vitamin A, iron, magnesium, and manganese. A 2014 study in the Journal of Medicinal Food found it provides bioavailable iron comparable to spinach, but without the oxalates that inhibit absorption. Perhaps most compelling is research on wild garlic's cardiovascular effects. Multiple studies in Germany and Austria have demonstrated that wild garlic extracts can significantly reduce blood pressure and improve lipid profiles. A 2018 clinical trial published in Phytomedicine showed that participants consuming wild garlic extract daily for 12 weeks experienced measurable reductions in LDL cholesterol and triglycerides, comparable to mild statin medications. The mechanism involves sulfur compounds' ability to relax blood vessel walls and reduce platelet aggregation, essentially thinning the blood naturally, precisely as medieval herbalists claimed. Wild garlic's antimicrobial properties are equally impressive. Laboratory studies show that allicin derived from wild garlic exhibits broad-spectrum antibacterial activity against Staphylococcus aureus, E. coli, and even antibiotic-resistant MRSA. A 2016 study in BMC Complementary Medicine demonstrated that wild garlic extracts could inhibit Helicobacter pylori, the bacteria responsible for stomach ulcers, suggesting those medieval monks were onto something scientifically valid. But wild garlic did not disappear everywhere. While North America forgot it, Europe has experienced a wild garlic renaissance. In Germany, Barlauch has become a springtime obsession. Farmers' markets in Bavaria explode with wild garlic products every April. Pesto, butter, cheese, bread, even schnapps. High-end restaurants feature seasonal wild garlic menus. In the United Kingdom, foraging for ramsons has become so popular that conservation groups issue guidelines to prevent overharvesting. British chefs like Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall have championed it, reintroducing it to a generation that had forgotten it. For the American gardener or forager, wild garlic presents both opportunity and responsibility. First, identification. Allium ursinum does grow in North America, primarily in the Pacific Northwest and Northeast, introduced by European settlers. However, the United States has poisonous lookalikes. The most deadly confusion is with Colchicum autumnale, autumn crocus, and Convallaria majalis, lily of the valley, both producing broad leaves in spring that superficially resemble wild garlic. The foolproof identification method is scent. Wild garlic smells intensely of garlic when crushed. Lily of the valley and autumn crocus have no garlic scent whatsoever. Before harvesting, crush a leaf between your fingers. If you don't immediately smell strong garlic, do not consume it. Examine the leaf structure carefully. Wild garlic leaves emerge individually from the ground on distinct petioles, whereas lily of the valley leaves emerge in pairs from a central stalk. Wild garlic flowers are white, star-shaped, arranged in spherical umbels, appearing in April and May. For cultivation, wild garlic thrives in USDA zones 4 through 8. It prefers cool, moist conditions and dappled shade, perfect for woodland gardens or fruit tree understories. Soil should be rich in organic matter, slightly acidic to neutral, consistently moist but well-draining. Wild garlic can be grown from seed, bulbs, or transplants. Seeds require cold stratification. Plant bulbs in autumn, spacing them 4 to 6 inches apart, about 2 inches deep. Once established, wild garlic is nearly indestructible. It requires minimal care, no fertilization beyond spring compost mulch, and no pest management. Deer and rabbits avoid it. The primary concern is containment. Wild garlic spreads aggressively by self-seeding and bulb division. In optimal conditions, a small planting can colonize an entire area within 5 years. Plant it where expansion is welcome, or grow it in containers. Harvesting is an exercise in timing. Leaves peak from March through early May. Early spring leaves are tender, mild, perfect for eating raw. As the plant prepares to flower, leaves become tougher and more pungent, better for cooking. Once flowers open, leaves decline, becoming fibrous and bitter. The flowers themselves are edible. After flowering, the plant goes dormant by early summer, disappearing until the following spring. Culinary applications are endless. Traditional wild garlic pesto. Leaves blended with olive oil, nuts, parmesan, and lemon. Wild garlic soup. Sautéed leaves, potatoes, onions, and stock. Wild garlic butter transforms any bread or vegetable. The leaves work anywhere you'd use cultivated garlic. Omelets, risottos, pasta sauces. The flowers add visual drama to salads. The bulbs can be pickled, though harvesting them kills the plant. Growing wild garlic is an act of reclamation. It is planting a connection to forests where your ancestors foraged, to knowledge systems that sustained humans through ice ages and plagues, to a time when medicine grew underfoot and food was a relationship with the land. Wild garlic asks nothing but patience and attention. It requires no synthetic fertilizers, no pesticides, no irrigation systems. It asks only for shade, moisture, and freedom to spread. This plant survived the last ice age, fed bears and humans for millennia, purified blood, cured infections, and flavored meals of peasants and emperors. It has been worshipped by monks, carried by soldiers, and harvested by grandmothers who understood that the forest provides. The wild garlic carpeting European forests every spring is not a weed. It is a library. It is a pharmacy. It is a calendar announcing that winter has lost its grip. And it is waiting for you to plant it, to harvest it, and to remember that the most powerful medicines come from the soil. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button. Subscribe to Ancestral Yields for more stories of the plants that shaped human history. We'll see you in the garden.